Jeremy, could you just clarify for us that we do or don't have quorum?
You do have quorum, 6.805.
And I see Mr. Moriarty is joining us.
Oh. Even better.
All right. We don't have anyone signed up for public comments, but is there anyone in the public who would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into matters that require board action. And first item on the agenda is the straw poll vote that we heard through email regarding the senior band trip. So, Lisa, would you like to clarify for us how we approach this?
Sure. We approached this similar to in the fashion we did, was it this past fall or the previous fall? 2 years ago, when we had the opportunity to have a fireworks display. We got word about that rather late and could not schedule a board meeting. So we consulted with our attorney who advised us on the procedure for conducting a straw poll via email. So we followed the same procedure for this.
Okay. And I think you've handed out the results of that straw poll vote.
I did.
Okay, so I think I'd be looking for a motion to ratify that straw poll vote.
I'll make a motion to ratify it.
Okay, that's Sharon. Betty's a second. Discussion. Neil.
How does this line up with 91A?
Since the board members will not be contemporaneously on the same email at the same time, there's no right to no violation.
What is that?
Since the board members are not contemporaneously on the same email, there is no right to no violation.
So which one does it fall under, the exceptions?
360.
It's not a contemporaneous meeting, therefore it is not a meeting, so there is no exception.
There wasn't a meeting.
No, not according to what we were told when we did this 2 years ago.
Nick?
I don't have any problem with this because of what we're talking about here. We're talking about a field trip. My concern is that I think that's really poor logic. I'm not sure who that was provided by, but if you extend that to some other large example, like let's add on a wing to the school or something, you know, let's do a straw poll vote. So, and I see some people kind of smiling and laughing about it, but where do you draw the line on that? That's the question. I don't have a problem with this because of what we're talking about in this circumstance, but I could see this easily reaching a point where we're making a financial expenditure that's kind of iffy, or making a decision that the public may want to weigh in on. So I think we need to be very careful with how we approach using this tactic.
Okay. I think I saw Cheryl, then Neil.
Well, just making the observation that I don't think we would use it for something that would expend funds in a way that we have no way to have that money, or I don't think this was in trying to circumvent community input. So I guess I don't have that concern, and if something with that weighty were to come out with this method, I'm sure more than you or I would say, maybe not this time.
Neil?
Can I call one of these meetings?
It's not a meeting.
Or whatever it is. Could I just do that myself? Let's say I want, maybe not your example, let's say I want to elect a new superintendent. Can I run one for that?
You could initiate a straw poll vote. Any one of us could initiate that email, but it's not a meeting. We would have to then ratify it at a following.
But it's perfectly legal for me to do that.
Yes. That's the advice from our
What policy
counsel.
is that under?
That's the advice from our legal counsel regarding the RSA.
Could I see the memo that we sent to the legal counsel? I could ask for it under freedom of information if you'd like.
I believe it's considered legal advice. It was sent.
Well, I'm a legal member of the school board.
Can I finish? It was sent to the board at the time that we did this in 2 years ago, so I can go back and find the thread if the board would like to see the full thread.
If it'll appease
So
the
anybody
members.
can run a straw poll vote without telling the public and just do it.
So long as it's not a contemporaneous exchange, yes.
Anybody can do it.
And so long as it's ratified.
Yeah,
So long as it's ratified.
The contemporaneous exchange thing, though, that's you're really treading. That's kind of like, oh, well, we all kind of communicated, but we didn't communicate directly. We did it kind of through it's kind of like the game telephone. You know, it's really stretching things a bit, and I don't like that as a justification for this instance. I think we need to be very careful with what we apply this rule to, because You can get in some really troubled waters with that.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to ratify the straw poll vote that was taken specifically for this field trip. Seeing no one else, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstentions? Karen is abstaining. Okay? Great.
I
So,
was going to say, there's two Karens now.
oh, yes.
So I
So,
said, we just got rid of two Bobs, and now we're.
all right, so let's move on to policies that are up for the second read. As is our policy and tradition, at our last meeting, we introduced these for first read. There was some discussion, but tonight's the night to have discussion on any one of these. So the motions are already on the floor in the sense that the committee's delivered them to the full board. So is there an appetite to take the motion apart into per policy?
Sir,
Yeah, I was just trying to pull the policies up.
I would certainly like to cover them one by one, especially so that the public who may not be familiar with them completely have the ability to follow along with us.
Okay. We can do that. So the motion from the policy committee is for policy JLCD, administering medication to students. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Winston? Okay. Discussion. Okay.
Could you give just a very brief summary for the spirit of?
Sure, and I think we had the luxury of having extra packets, so I think the public has received packets tonight, but there is a document in there which is the rationale for each of these policy changes that are coming up tonight. JLCD, administering medication to students. Amendments to this sample policy are necessary due to the passage of Bill 5025, which adds a new statute, RSA 244A, relative to the use of epinephrine, and another series relative to the use of, see if I can get this right, bronchodilators,
Bronchodilators.
thank you, spacers and nebulizers in school. Paragraph 6 of this sample policy is added to meet the requirements of the new legislation. And so we are adopting the NHSBA recommended policy, and we have added our own paragraph which states, at the recommendation of administration, non-prescribed medication over the counter should not be encouraged for use during the school day. Non-prescribed medications require written authorization from the parent guardian. School personnel shall not make their own personal medication available to students. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. So we're moving on to JLCE and EBBC. These are two policies listed the same under two different collections of policies. So here again, we're adopting similar language regarding these specific medical devices. In this policy, there was also discussion as to whether or not we should include paragraphs related to opioid storage and use. And the recommendation from the policy committee at this time is to not include that language. Doesn't mean it can't be taken up again. But at this time, we didn't feel it appropriate to add that to our policy book. Comments or questions on this pair of policies? Karen?
I was just wondering the discussion in policy regarding the opioid paragraph. What the feeling was on why it was removed.
Sure, so I'm a little bit remiss. First time chairing a board meeting, pardon me. The motion from the policy committee is to adopt this policy as written. Is there a second?
Second. Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you. No problem. So to Karen's question. So Winston and Kristen were there as well, so I may lean on them a little bit to keep me honest here. But the conversation, as I remember it, was that taking on that responsibility and being a public facility, and therefore any member of the public may be coming in with a need, was one part of the conversation. The recent report from Jeremy on drug and alcohol awareness and safety contributed to our logic, where we have very, very low numbers and low risk at this time. But also the acknowledgement that we need to adopt the components of this policy required by law. This is not, this section you're asking about, the opioid storage and distribution is, excuse me, the Narcan component is not required by law. It is
Right.
a recommendation only. So we are always at liberty to take up the policy again.
Okay. I was just questioning, do we even have anyone trained to administer at this time anyways?
At one time, our nurses were. I'm not sure if they're still currently.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen?
And just another point was that first responders have
The ability.
access to it anyway, so we would be calling first responders. And
Right.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. All right, so we're moving on to policy IKB, which is our homework policy. And I didn't ask him in advance, but maybe, Jeremy, could I call you on the spot to speak to this a little bit?
Sure.
First, we'll take a motion. So the motion from the policy committee is to take up the homework policy IKB as written with the modifications you see here. Is there a second?
Second.
Take Karen on that one.
It's just a point of clarification. In the previous board packet, June 5th, we're looking at homework policy draft. Is that what we're,
Yes.
that's the most recent cut, so we don't really have a, there seem to be a lot of edits to this.
Correct?
Okay. So that's the document everybody's functioning off right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, Jeremy, you want to take a minute and describe the spirit behind the changes and how it made its way through education and then to policy and then to here?
Sure. It was brought to administration, to education, that the homework policy as it currently stood needed to be updated. It had been updated a few years back, and we used it, and there were things that worked well and things that weren't working. So teachers, administration wanted to check it out, and I believe some community members also brought it to Ed Committee, some parents, that we needed to talk about the homework policy. So we started by putting out a survey to board, to parents, to students, to teachers, and basically said what parts of the homework policy make sense, what parts do you agree with, what parts don't you agree with. Then we offered up a district-wide committee made up of teachers and administrators to go through it and look at those pieces, and brought a draft based off of that work to to Ed Committee. Ed Committee asked us to go back and re-poll the same groups with the edits we made to get feedback on that. Went back to Ed. Ed passed it to policy. Policy asked us just to make a couple changes. We did that. We did it through. So the main parts of the homework policy is it was really important to the community. It was really important to teachers and students that homework be considered important, but that when assigning homework, what types of homework we assign, how much homework we assign is really important as well, and taking into account that students have many other responsibilities besides just homework. So that homework needs to have a purpose. It needs to not just be busy work. So we really went through and looked at it and said, we want homework to be a practice of skills. We want it to connect to the curriculum, and we want it to be something that kids can do. Oftentimes the feedback was that the kids who most need the practice are getting homework that is too hard for them. And then, it becomes a family project, and sometimes those kids don't have the support that they need. So what is that homework's purpose at that point? The other conversation that we had was that everyone kind of has some responsibilities with this homework policy, that the board has responsibilities to put out that we believe that homework is an important part of the educational program. The administration has to monitor that and ensure that that homework is fair, it is differentiated for kids, and that it's being followed correctly. We need students to take it seriously, and we need parents to be willing to communicate with the school and say, this is too much, we can't get this done in our family, or my student's having a lot of trouble. So that's what we really looked at, is all those components, and really said, if we're gonna send homework home, everyone needs to be on board with it. Betty,
No, I think you wanted it.
Nick?
Jeremy, from your position, as Director of Curriculum, how do you feel that the changes made to this policy are going to improve the set of skills that we expect our students to learn when they're graduating?
You know, it depends on homework used in the best way really gives kids an extra opportunity to practice those skills. It shouldn't be a place where kids learn new skills. It's also a great way to communicate with families about what's going on at school. So in this policy, the hope is that it can do those things and not be sent home as a stressor, and a place where kids are trying to learn new skills. Or, you know, I've sat with plenty of kids or plenty of parents. I have a lot of friends who said they're sending homework home that I don't remember how to do. You know, once the kids hit 7th grade math, a lot of parents are out. They're tapped out. They don't know what to do, and it becomes a stressor. So the hope is that with this homework policy, it'll be skills that the kids need to practice as they're doing it, and beneficial work that will connect directly with what they're doing in school, which should bolster those skills, bolster those abilities.
Okay, so my concern with this is that I don't want to use this as a method of saying, well, the majority of parents don't remember their pre-calculus or their algebra, so we're not going to enforce those rigors of learning upon our students who are in high school. That's not where the direction I certainly want to go as a board member.
Not at all. Not at all. What it's saying is that if the student is bringing that home, then they should have shown some level of understanding of it in the classroom, so that it's practice, so that it's a chance to work on those skills that they already have, to kind of give them a deeper, kind of that idea of muscle memory. The more you do it, the better it's going to be. If we're sending home pre-calculus to kids who aren't ready for it, then that has no purpose. Just to call it rigor, those kids that aren't ready for that homework, that is not serving a purpose. We want homework to serve a purpose of giving kids the skills that they need to practice.
Now, would they be in the right class, though? I mean, if they're not ready for pre-calculus homework, should they be in that class?
Well, so I think I'm talking K-12, and you're really talking high school. So no, a kid in pre-calculus, the homework that they would get in a pre-calculus class should be pre-calculus homework for that student, of course. What I'm speaking more to is, the elementary and the middle grades, or some of the high school courses that have differing levels. But yeah, no, a pre-calculus class, an AP class, an honors class, of course, those are, there's a different, and this allows for that, because the kids in there are the work is going to be set for them. That's what the hope is that it matches the kids in the class, and it's not just arbitrary. It's not just something that's pulled out and said, I always give this homework assignment the first week of November for everyone, regardless of who's in here. That's...
So
yeah.
For the benefit of the public, a lot of what is crossed out from the former policy is some original prescriptive language that describes how many minutes or hours per day each student, depending on their grade level, how much homework should they be assigned. So at one point the policy said that for grades 9 through 12 there should be 2 hours of homework 5 days a week, with no approach to where's the student at, what do they need, and giving the teacher an opportunity to differentiate and tailor the work based on their skill level. When education brought this forward to policy, we had 4 or 5 questions simply by virtue of having not been to the meeting. And Jeremy was, and Betty were kind enough to respond quickly with, how that conversation went, here's what's in our meeting minutes, et cetera. And so I think almost 8 or 9 members of the board have seen and walked through this. So personal opinion, feels good.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot of good work went into making sure we had all the right stakeholders at the table, as opposed to the previous version, which was a little bit of a policy in a vacuum.
We had good support from the teachers on this as well.
Yes.
So, any other? Karen?
I just want to say, I think a lot of work has gone into this, and it is definitely a step in the right direction. The only concern I have with it is in regards to it being a broad policy for K through 12, because I'm not big on the little kids, like kindergarten, first, second, say somebody that has ADHD or has a hard time sitting, going home, and like they simply cannot do it, you know, being punished or something for not doing that homework that night. I feel like at that young grade, it's like it's more important to be outside and burn off some energy. So that's my only thing. I think going forward, we might want to differentiate this a little bit for younger and older age groups.
Yeah, and absolutely. And Karen, what I'll say is our intent was that it could be K to 12 because the board is simply pointing out that homework is a part of the educational process. You know, that's what the ed committee was saying, and that homework should fit those kids. And it also allows for the principals to work together to create those. I don't want to use policy or procedure, you know, the practice for those individual grade levels. And
Yeah.
so this is more of a philosophy about
Right.
this is what homework should be. And I agree with you. I would see that homework can be, you need to go home and exercise. You need to go home and, you know, I've got a nephew who has his PE homework is
Right.
he has to do so many minutes of extra exercise a week. So I agree with you. And I think this, hopefully, you know, and we've got to see it in action, right? And that's the test of time. But hopefully this addresses exactly what you're talking about. That's the hope.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen?
Yeah, and I do think that this policy, it is made more broad so that teachers can do that. Like number 2 under the teachers will be responsible for creating assignments that are differentiated to meet student needs. So each different child isn't, like what Jeremy was trying to say, getting the same
Right.
homework.
I
Whereas
agree with
before
that.
it was, you must read 20 minutes a day.
Right.
So I think it does address that.
Betty?
And I think at the high school level in particular, there were times when a child could pass every test, and if they didn't do their homework, they failed.
It still happens.
So, and I don't know, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Nick?
Yeah, but I was one of those students that passed a lot of tests and didn't like doing homework. But there's value in doing that homework.
Oh, there is.
And part of that, even if it's boring for you, it's being able to go through those exercises, because in the real world, you don't get to do everything you enjoy. And it's important to have that sort of experience and to have those skill sets developed in you to be able to do something continuously. I think that would help also students moving into college so that they're able to stick with something and make it through college.
Good discussion. Seeing no other concerns, take the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Abstentions? Nays? Okay, seeing none, that's great. All right, we're going to move on to policy JICI, which is weapons on school property, specific to the student handbook. And so the motion from policy committee is to adopt this sample policy as written with the inline edits made by the policy committee on 522, and to retire policy JICI-R, which was an older form. Neil?
So moved with amendment.
Okay, Neil's the
Need a
second.
second first.
No, you are the second. The policy committee made the motion as the first, you're the
Okay.
second, so thank you.
Like I said last meeting, I'd like to strike the word serious in that weapons paragraph, which is about 60% down. I think the lawyers would jump all over that, is to say how serious was that injury?
You're, Neil, clarification, you're referring to the paragraph that begins with the word weapon in quotes?
Yes, it's about 60% down.
Yeah, got it. And you're referring to the word serious,
Because of physical injury.
third word from the end.
So that's my motion to amend.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, so we're in discussion on an amendment to what's proposed to strike that word. So let's limit the discussion to just that.
That's why I put my hand down.
Well, thanks for your support. Karen?
How is this policy off the website, the state website, or was this, like, how similar is this to the state's recommendation?
This is the state's recommendation
With
with
the
the
edits.
exception of the red edits.
Okay.
So,
So the state would prefer to have serious in there,
well, it's the New Hampshire School Board Association's
Right.
recommended policy.
right?
Like they also recommended slung shot, too.
Yes. Okay, so any other discussion on striking of the word serious?
I have to say, I do like the idea of getting rid of the word serious for multiple reasons. Serious is an arbitrary statement, and just because the weapon or object didn't cause serious physical damage, is it because the weapon couldn't, or because the student was fortunate enough
That it did.
to do a maneuver to be preventive? So I feel like any physical damage is intent.
Okay.
Physical injury.
A roll call, too, please.
Okay. So we have a request for a roll call vote on this amendment to the motion, which is to strike the word serious. When you're ready, Jeremy?
Kristen,
Yes.
Win,
Yes.
Karen Wheeler,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Karen, is it Buno?
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so now we're back to the motion on the floor is for the policy as presented minus the word serious. We already have a second, so discussion. Nick?
I remember last time we had questioned the scope of this, because this is to be something that applies to students. That was the original intent, but then we were talking about how it also applies to the public during public events. And then the question came up, how does it apply to employees of the district as well? So was that ever resolved?
Not in the sense that we were going to take this J policy, meaning a student policy, and bloat it to encompass those other concepts.
Because we still have some references to bodies other than students in here, I believe.
Members of the public.
Right. And school staff.
Yep.
So I just want to make sure that we have the scope proper with the language in this.
So policy committee has not met since the last time we talked. I have a note for our next meeting to go look at the employee version of this policy, right? Because we should be addressing, this one just happened to bubble to the surface first. Is there anything you're concerned with is what's written here from a student policy perspective?
Well, we've included language about the public in here, so I think personally it would be a good idea to table this until the policy committee does have a chance to look at the other policies that are related to this and that may have overlapping or similar language or dissimilar language that we want to be continuous across our policies for this specific subject area. So I'd make that motion to table until the policy committee brings back their discussion and recommendations.
Okay.
Could we, or you need a second for it?
Yeah, we need a second for
Could
motion
we
to table.
hold
There won't
off
be
a
any
second so that we can see if other people have comments before?
Yeah.
Point of information, I do believe that this was one of the policies we wanted to, if it was going to change, to make sure that it was completed in time for student handbook, which is usually printed, I think, in the July timeframe. So a motion to table would probably, it would miss that window of opportunity. Doesn't mean we can't publicize it in other ways, it's just a factoid. Karen?
In regards to the members of the public who violate this policy, that would mean that members of the public would not allowed to be bring any weapons or guns onto property, and I don't know, is that correct? The way it's written?
The way it's written? That's the way the policy committee interpreted it.
Which I don't know if that would stand up legally.
It is legal for the school district to have a policy prohibiting certain activities or certain things for the public. So having a policy that prohibits the public bringing firearms onto school property is permissible right now. There was a case in, I think it was Hanover, that I'm not sure what the end result of that has been, because they implemented that policy and there was a challenge because, as you know, New Hampshire is,
Right.
you can carry.
That's where I was-
But the prevailing belief that we've been, and superintendents have been informed of, is that it's legal to have the policy. The problem becomes, how do you enforce it? Because you're asking local law enforcement to enforce that policy is a sticky wicket because it's not enforcing the law. So so I think that's where the rub comes in.
Right, that's where my concern was personally.
Did we table this?
No, we did not.
No, I took
Because
back,
if we
I took back
we
my
can't be
table.
discussing.
Right, I took back my table because
Okay.
we wanted to make sure everybody could discuss it.
So
Sorry, I have
I'll
one
go
more.
first and then Karen. I'll point out that some of what is also crossed out in red was really where the policy committee spent their time. We felt that rather than saying may, we'll say will. So if a member of the public were to carry a weapon onto school property, that they will be reported to local law enforcement. And we're crossing out that everything after the comma, if it's used in a threatening, harassing, or intimidating manner. It's really not the expertise of anyone, any student or anyone working for the school or working on the school property. It's just a clear statement that says, if we notice a weapon, they will be reported, and local law enforcement can then determine if they have a right or if they have a concealed permit or what have you. It's not ours to make that judgment call. So, Karen?
Okay. The other question I had was the definition of weapon. It says, is further defined as any device, instrument, material, or substance which is used. So basically, I just feel that's very broad, attempted to be used or threatened to be used, causing serious, causing death or physical injury. I feel like it's so broad that it's hard to define what a weapon is. So that's my other concern. I mean, even, say, social media could cause quote-unquote physical injury in the sense that a child has a panic attack or something. So I just am concerned that that paragraph's a bit too broad.
And similarly, last meeting I had brought up in relation to that, if this is to apply school-wide, to our kitchen staff, with knives, or I think somebody else brought up shop. We have a lot of items in there.
Yeah, that's right.
So I just don't feel, to me personally, I don't feel this policy is ready to even go into a handbook until we have all those. There seem to be a lot of questions. I'd like to see policy committee go over them a little bit more and get back to us on it. Even if it doesn't happen to make the handbook this year, I'd rather have something go in that's good than try to rush something.
Kristen, then Neil.
Well, it is defining the weapon, so it has to be used, attempted to be used, or threatened to be used to cause death or physical injury. So, a maintenance department, as long as no one's trying to hit somebody with a shovel, that's not a weapon. Or, in the shop, as long as no one's using those tools as in a threatening manner, then it's not a weapon.
Neil?
That was sort of my same thought on the tools is, yeah, there's tools there, but are they considered weapons just because they're there? A snow shovel is a weapon, in the wrong hands. Do you have a chance to talk to this policy committee from the state and find out where they were on these items?
No.
I mean, this must have come up. I can't believe that the shovel and the tools didn't come up in their review.
Well, it's saying that it's only a weapon if it's used to threaten.
I understand.
Yeah.
So why are we worrying about them if they're shovels or tools?
Karen?
I was going
Or
to, go ahead. Whoever spoke.
Well, when we talked about this in policy, I hear your concern about getting this right. I also think with the increase in concerns about weapons in the school, that we do want to try to get this into handbooks because it still has better definitions than our current policy has. And I think that it's really difficult to craft something that considers every possible scenario, but I think this covers many of them. And so I'm comfortable with this as it's written with the amendment.
Karen?
No,
Are you good?
go ahead, Nick.
Okay, Nick?
Yeah, but I'm definitely not one of the types of people that thinks that something is better than nothing. I think you can get in a lot of trouble when you do that. There's a lot of, it does cover a lot of things. I think that's the problem, and I think it can be used or interpreted in ways that just going to end up causing us problems. Like, for instance, for the definition of a weapon, something that can be used or is readily capable of causing death or serious physical injury. And then in the next paragraph, it says, weapons are not permitted in school buildings or on school property. So by that vagueness, you're saying that anything that could potentially be used as a weapon shouldn't be on school property. And I think it's overly gray in the way that it's currently worded.
The state law made it even grayer.
I was just going to say, I guess I see what you're saying with threatened. My take on that is, say you're, again, using social media, 'cause since that's often the case. On social media, a student threatens to do something when they get to cooking class or shop class. The term threatened, and I don't know, I find the whole policy a little too gray and vague also.
Okay. So we'll take a vote, and just to clarify, a yes vote, of course, would ratify this change. A no vote would do nothing.
Well, I guess this is where I would actually make a motion to table until the policy committee can go over this.
I'll second that.
Okay, so a motion to table can't be debated?
I'm not trying to debate, I'm questioning what you just said. A no vote means we keep the current policy, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, that's if I didn't make a motion to table.
There could be a follow-on motion to push it back to
Understood,
policy, but
then I don't know what a table motion would do, other than to do the same thing a no vote would do.
Because the no vote would mean that the board doesn't approve this, and I think this is a policy that's something that's needed, but I think it needs more work, which is why.
I understand that, but so would a no vote would do the same thing, wouldn't it?
not to debate, but a point of information.
Oh, whatever.
A motion to table simply stalls this until a future
Yeah.
time certain. It does not push it back to policy committee.
Okay, I made the motion to table to send it back to committee.
It's two different things.
Well, then it's a
We've done
different
that
motion.
before.
Not to table. Table means put it in the parking lot.
All right, I'd like to.
If you extend it,
I'd like
you
to
can extend it,
rephrase
though.
my motion. I would like to send this back to committee then.
Does the person who seconded agree?
Yes.
Lisa?
Just to clarify, we already do have a policy on the books related to this. I don't recall how much it changed from what we currently have. I don't believe that the School Boards Association policy had changed much. Looks like April 2013, so I suspect ours was already pretty similar.
Yeah, prior to that, it was 1993 and had a form with it for what to do when you bring your hunting weapon to school and such.
Right, okay, yep, I remember now.
Okay, so the motion at the
So that's,
moment is,
just for clarification, so putting this aside, we're still using the one from 93 that has a form for bringing your hunting rifle to school?
Yeah.
All righty then.
so there's a motion to send this back to policy committee. They'll be meeting on the 26th, I believe. And so we would hopefully be bringing something back to the board in the July
If
meeting.
this were to fail.
Karen?
So the hope would be we would have this at the board meeting in July, and does that give it enough time to be in the handbooks as you wanted, Lisa?
Probably not, but we can always do it as an addendum.
Right. Have a separate form?
I think we had to do something similar with the lunch payment policy a couple of years ago.
Neil?
I guess the best way to say that, when you bring it back, I hope you're bringing it back for the second read. At least give it a chance to make the book there that they're
Yeah.
trying to put out.
I don't think we have any policy on this, but our tradition has always been that it's in second read mode from now on until we resolve it. Karen?
And maybe make sure we have that even in advance of the packet, perhaps, the policy, so we can read over it.
Nick?
So July 15th is the next board meeting? Is it somewhere around there?
Full board is July 10th.
July 10th.
All right.
So when is the deadline for the printing of the student handbook?
It's usually before the end of June. It's something they usually try to tie up before the summer months.
Is there some reason why we can't do it July 11th, submit it?
Turnaround time.
They don't get returned to the school in time.
Yep.
Printing company.
A month? Sounds like we need a new printing company.
I used to work with a 3-month lead time, so I was impressed that it was such a short one here.
So a yes vote sends us back to policy, a no vote brings us back to the original motion, and then we would vote on the policy as presented. So, all in favor to send this back to policy committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Let's do a roll call, please.
Kristen,
No.
Good idea.
Wynn,
What's your vote? Your turn.
No.
Karen,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Karen,
No.
Sherry,
No.
Betty,
No.
Scott.
No.
2.046 yes, 6.591 no.
Okay. So now we are back to the motion of the document as presented. So a yes vote will approve this policy as presented to you, and a no vote would leave us with our current policy. So Lisa?
Although I do believe you voted to strike the word serious.
Yes.
Correct.
As amended, even.
Yeah,
Yes, as amended.
Sorry, my bad. Nick?
I'm not going to vote for this because I don't feel that it's a policy that's ready and that it's going to cause us more pain than it's going to solve.
Okay. Karen?
I want to say that I likely won't vote for it either. For the reasons I've already stated, I do think we need an updated policy, but to do it at this time with all of the questions concerns me. Also, as a side note, one of the other concerns I have is for a student that may be fearful or whatnot and have like a small club on their keys or something, I don't think that's bad to have in possession at school if they don't use it, but that's just my personal vote as a female that has had that issue on school property.
Jeremy, let's do a roll call for this one as well, please.
Can you clarify the vote?
Yeah, so a yes vote will approve this policy as amended, and a no vote will return us to the current policy on the books. Jeremy?
Kristen,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes.
Karen,
Pass?
Neil,
Yes.
Nick,
No.
Karen,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Betty,
Yes.
Yes.
Scott, Karen.
No.
7.666 yes, 0.971 no.
Okay. Moving on to policy JCA, change of school or assignment. So some minor amendments were made as a result of Senate Bill 316, which amends the RSA to clarify that the placement or change of school assignment made pursuant to a student's special education needs and services does not constitute a change of placement for purposes of RSA 193.3. So, if a student's IEP calls for a specific accommodation that can only be serviced in a specific building or out-of-district placement, that decision is handled by the student's IEP team and is not considered by this policy or by the RSA as a, quote, reassignment. This process is not affected by RSA 193.3, and a guardian should not apply to the school board for consideration of these matters. So, backstory, there is a process for guardians to apply to the school board requesting a reassignment. They do not need to do so when it's related to a student IEP. That's handled through a different process. RSA 193.3 is specific to manifest educational hardship and the process for guardians to apply to the school board. So, I'll pause here and say that the motion is from the policy committee to adopt the sample policy as written. Is there a second?
Second.
Take Betty on the second, and I'll open it up. Nick?
Just one question about this. How does the language in 193.3 or 193.14 affect the upper portion, condition and procedures for reassignment number 6, which refers to 1% of the ADM? Is that defined within the state law? Or is that something in our language?
That is either RSA or it's ed rules. I believe it is in the RSA.
Okay. It just seems like really arbitrary.
The intent of that, because there's actually two, this policy is specific to a best interest transfer. There's also a policy for manifest educational hardship, and I believe both policies have that stipulation in there. I'd have to double check on the manifest educational hardship, but the rationale is to help ensure that that school districts and school boards aren't sending out a disproportionate number of students. I don't know what that comes out to in terms of actual counts. We don't have very many students in our district that are placed outside of our district through either of these policies, this one or manifest at this point in time.
For us, that would be, what, like a dozen?
We have less.
16.
Yeah, we have, I can think of two. Right?
No, but I mean, this would limit us to
Would limit, yes.
16 or something like that, right?
Something, yeah,
Okay.
about that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great, two more. We're on to EEA, Student Transportation Services. So the motion is to adopt the NHSBA sample policy as written with the inline edits made by the policy committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's from Winston. Nick?
I'm looking on EEA, Student Transportation Services.
Yes.
That's the one we're on.
Yes.
Where are the inline edits? Have they been?
Well, let's,
Yeah, I don't have any either.
that's a great question. Hold on, folks. So- That with inline edits could have been a copy paste. I am double checking our notes from the policy committee meeting. And that is correct. So the motion was phrased incorrectly. That's my bad. The motion should read to adopt the NHSBA sample policy as written.
So this is a new policy.
We have EEA on the books, I believe.
We do.
This is a NHSBA
Yes.
policy without edits, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Right, adopted as recommended. So the short of this one is that there's House bill passage, which amends a specific RSA, that says if a student is attending a charter school of some sort, the bus company can accommodate them to pick them up, but we as a school district are not responsible for the financial cost of that. It's up to the bus company to be invoicing the charter school or the family or what have you separately and not having us incur that cost.
That's a HB 1272.
Yes, yes, a House Bill 1272. It's allowing charter school students access to bus company services, but clarifying that we don't pick up the cost. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One more. Policy EEAA, audio and video surveillance on school premises. So this policy is being renamed if this passes, not just school property, but premises. Motion is to adopt the sample policy as written. I think we have inline edits on this. Thank you, Winston. That's a second. So, yes, we made a point to edit the sample policy in the following ways. The policy is renamed to factor school premises, for example, on the bus or at an away game, etc., field trips, etc. That counts as school premises. We added the leading paragraph in red, which defines the school premises. This is actually a copy-paste from, I think, our recent drug and alcohol policy updates that we passed.
Yep.
Right, so we're using the same language now throughout multiple policies. And then two specific paragraphs from our current policy were retained, the reporting violation and the penalties for improper use. So the previous legislation limited the use of audio and video recording devices to classrooms. And so we're adopting this change to support House Bill 1372, which opens it up to premises.
Now,
Nick?
has this been, I'm sorry, I was busy reading, was this seconded?
Yes, by Winston.
How, has this been run by legal concerning our ability to film at, say, bus stops, being able to point the camera at people's houses and stuff like that?
Not that specific, but this policy has been, the law did go into effect in 2016, and we did make an edit to our video surveillance policy around that time as well. I think this just makes some further edits, so the attorneys at the NHSBA have weighed in.
Okay. And as far as the last, I think it's the last sentence of the, of the red paragraph at the top, it will include streets in the school neighborhood as well. So.
So, for example, if students get into a fight on a street on their way to school, and we happen to catch it on a bus video, we can use that.
Okay. So as far as being on the bus, I can understand that. So we're going to have exterior cameras on the buses?
No, we're not having exterior cameras on the
Okay,
buses.
so the spirit of the policy wasn't about what we could do or what we could record. It was about simply defining. So it's not pushing for our capabilities to expand the cameras. It is simply defining what is counting as school premises for what could be filmed. Doesn't mean we would film that. It means we're within legislative rights to film in that capacity if we feel the need.
Sure, but it's one step, it's the enabling step to enable you to do that if
Yes.
you wanted to do it. So that's just my concern, is the legality of it, if it's something that we're in our rights to do.
Well, that's the recommendation of NHSBA legal counsel,
Okay.
so. Any other questions or concerns? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
One abstention.
One abstention. Okay. And that completes our policies for the month. So thank you all. It was actually really great discussion, great work. Applaud you. So now we're moving on to a motion from Finance for a budget transfer.
Yes. So you should have in your packet the budget transfer information. And the motion was to submit as written to the full board. But basically, as it was described in finance, it's in the amount of $149,425. And that was basically, some of the aides were not transferred from one of the schools to another. So one of the schools looks like they have a deficit when, in fact, it's because the teacher wasn't transferred in the budgeting process. So the three different lines you see are salary, and then the next line is health insurance, and the next one is FICA.
So the motion is from the Finance Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion, questions? Vincent?
Why the 97,000? Somebody not getting paid, or?
No, so it's, what it is there was an aide that moved from one school to another. I forget what school. I think it was from Troy to Cutler or something. But anyways, they just weren't moved in the budgeting lines. Like, they've transferred and they're teaching at the other school, but the budget line didn't follow.
So,
This is a transfer to make it simple.
Right.
yeah, so when we receive
To
our
do.
budget binders every year, there is a headcount budget broken down by school, but if resources are moved, not just a person, but if the actual chair is moved between schools, we need to move the budget to support that.
Correct.
Okay? Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay, so now we're on to a motion from extracurricular. Care to read your motion?
Sure. The Extracurricular Activities Committee motion was to encumber up to $25,000 if available at the end of June to provide administration with flexibility to restructure the stipends for sports and clubs.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So before we get started, we've had a little bit of advice I want to read to you. We reached out to legal counsel to ask, Actually, we reached out to the New Hampshire Department of Revenue to ask for the specifics
Okay,
on this.
thank you, I'm glad.
And I think, just to preface this, I'm going to look to folks who have long memories on the board of how we've done this in years past, because I don't have the history on this. But this is, I'm not going to quote the RSA number properly because I see multiple references here, but the amount has, prior to the end of that fiscal year, become encumbered by a legally enforceable obligation created by contract or otherwise to any person for the expenditure of that amount. Want me to read that again?
A little bit,
It's
yes.
RSA 32,
32.7.
7, yeah.
Okay. To encumber funds, the amount that you are encumbering must have, prior to the end of the fiscal year, so June 30th in our case, must have become encumbered by a legally enforceable obligation created by a contract or otherwise to any person for the expenditure of that amount. So if we had a bill due for $7.19 that we didn't anticipate, we could encumber funds for that. It's a specific amount, it's a specific organization, it's all, right, it's all in front of us, so to speak. This motion, Kristen should speak to it a little bit more, maybe the logic of how it came forward, et cetera.
Sure. In the extracurricular activities committee, we discussed maybe changing how we do the stipends for sports and clubs, maybe being able to give teachers a bit more, or possibly people who continue to coach on for multiple years. And we would like to be able to start that this upcoming year. And that's why we had originally thought that we could encumber funds in order to fix or to restructure that program, but then we.
Winston?
Yeah, I was reading in that, when it was sent, that you had to be specific with the amount you couldn't use up to. You had to have an exact number,
Yes.
so this doesn't meet that.
Right.
So we need to have a number to encumber it.
Which implies that if we pick a number and it's a round number, that we would use all of it.
But we've got to have backup that we do have a need to encumber it.
Right.
Okay,
Didn't
so
you-
Nick, Neil, Karen.
My question is the legality of it, I guess. It can, I know we can't do this with like adding another staff member. It has to be something, if it's something that's budgeted, it has to fall within our operating budget, correct?
Are you speaking for next year, this year, or specific to the encumbering of the funds?
The encumber, if we encumber funds this year, are we talking about doing it for staff next year?
We-
Oh, you can't
I
do,
believe
that's
that's
what
what
you said
they're
you can't do.
intending.
Yeah, well, your example would be if we believed we needed to add a new teacher sometime next year.
Or an athletic coach.
Or an athletic, well,
Yes.
what have you, that if we were to encumber funds, how would we have the specific contractual amount to pay until we identified the candidate, figured out where they fell into the pay scale per the contract, right? We wouldn't have those specifics, so because we can't pin the tail on that, we, per this RSA, we can't take that approach. So the stipends are not part of the contractual,
Right.
salary pay, hourly pay, et cetera. And it's not necessarily for employees. There could be for volunteers or what have you. Neil?
I thought your intent was to up the coaches and things like that, their scale. Wasn't that what you brought up in June?
Right, part of it, yeah.
Well, why don't you just put the onus on them to spend it by the end of the month? You can't forward into next year. You can't do that.
That's my question. Are we looking for next year?
You
or
gotta
this year?
spend it now.
This would
You
be
can
next year
encumber some.
because
So-
we're done with this year.
Yeah, you gotta.
So the extracurricular committee is hearing from administration that the work they've started on resetting the stipend scale, this coach gets 1,000 and this coach only gets 800, but what's the logic for that difference? Honestly, it's just tradition, and that we haven't actually set
And
a
it comes up
scale.
every so often, that kind of stuff.
So the idea is that if we were to rework the scale to some appropriate measure of level of training, number of hours volunteered, age group they work with, et cetera, that there would be flexibility in the budget to apply and make sure we get the best coaches we can get or the best volunteers we can get. But if the board believes that, per this reference to this RSA, that this is out of order, then that's the road we need to take. So, Karen?
So in finance, we brought up encumbering funds because I knew this would be the last meeting that we would be able to do that. And when I spoke to Janelle, she was under the belief that, according to this RSA, we had to have an exact amount in order to encumber funds. The other point she made was that there was money still left in the budget line item for stipends for this current year, so there was really no need for us to be encumbering it for this case, for this scenario.
I think the contrary discussion that the EC committee is having is that we couldn't get enough of the right people
Right.
because we don't offer enough, maybe.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's the
I don't
work
know
for
the
the town.
backstory, yeah.
Sorry, Nick, then Winston.
So I'm just reading the language of this. It's very brief. So, motion to encumber up to $25,000 if available at the end of June. So this is at the end of every June
No,
or this year.
2018.
Okay, so I don't see how we could do this year. And even if it was for next year, you would have to wait until the end of the year before you could have access to those funds anyways.
It's not for next year, because that hasn't got
No,
here yet.
next year's budget is different.
July 1st.
So the way this played out, just to be nice to Kristen, it's her first committee she's leading. The motion came forward up in committee, and she's done the diligence of bringing it to the full board. But then the research of what's appropriate or not came from finance committee and work with Janelle. So in between.
Right after.
So the motion is here, and we wanted to discuss it because the motion was made. But now we're landing on this part of the conversation. So Karen, and then Neil.
Can I add something about the encumbrance? Working for the state and constantly encumbering money. I believe, by the way that's read, and at least if it's following the state laws, the way you could probably get this to be legal is if the motion read to review all stipends for the fiscal year of 2018, and the money would be encumbered to compensate those that weren't paid to the same level, because then the money would be paid in 2019 because you have to be able to review it, but it's money that was owed to them in 2018.
They signed contracts for the amounts that they currently received.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, so this is part of a proactive review of
Yep.
the program, not something we definitively owe them. But that is very creative.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example of one that did fly, maybe that'll help. The seats in the auditorium were $84,000. That was paid for into the prior year because they got a price for the chairs, and they put a dollar amount on it, and they bought the chairs. That's how you did it in those days. I don't know how you do this one here unless you pay them before June 30th.
I was going to say also, in my memory, like, for example, the sound system, like, we had an itemized receipt with exact amounts in order to do it. So I think that's the problem.
Yep. Winston?
I think this is a budget item to be taken up in the fall. I think it's too late to increase the stipends for right now. We don't know who we're going to have for everybody yet. And I think it's an excellent idea, but because of that exact number, I think we ought to just postpone this or table it until, let it go through the process.
Table it and it'll die.
Well,
It'll die anyways, because, that's $25,000 that's going to be asked for. Whether it gets you a better coach or not, I don't know.
so what little prerogative I have, I'm going to rule the motion out of order. Because I don't think we can take this up.
Can I just add one last piece? I totally agree. The work with looking at the stipends needs to be done.
It's out of order, but you're going to talk to it anyway.
I asked if I could.
Okay.
I just wanted to read the response I got directly from Jamie Dow at the DRA. The board must vote to encumber a specific amount of funds for a specific contractual purpose.
Okay. So there's no motion on the floor, but for informational purposes, one of the items you received in paper this evening, on the backside with this little blue table, is specific to the penny amount to support hockey.
For this year or next year?
This was this year.
We already have a motion that has passed the board. We have no motion to take up tonight, which describes funding hockey, and that's still legit because we have the specific cost for next year before us.
But this is present year cost, right?
Yes,
18.
yes. Okay, so, everybody good?
What is your purpose of?
So I was going to say, could you give everyone a little bit of the backstory on that too, because of the original motion of hockey and whatnot?
Yeah, so the original motion of hockey, I don't want to speak out of turn, and Laura, I don't know if you have those minutes.
April 17th.
Do you have those? Or does anybody else have them handy?
I have it.
But there was a
I'm just
motion
trying to
already
find-
passed by the board.
I have it in this paragraph if you wait one
Sure,
second.
if you can read it.
Oh, I have it too.
I was going to say, if you beat me, that's fine. To fund hockey in a similar manner to other sports, amend the motion to, there was a lot of amendments is why I'm, move to fund the hockey team in the amount of up to $20,000 from the excess funds from the 2017-18 unallocated fund balance. So that motion was not a specific amount, the motion was up to $20,000.
And then it went up by,
Yeah, then they said just open up the floodgates to pay whatever.
sure.
Just a point of clarification, the district already funds about $9,800, so deduct that from this $26,796, and that gets you under your $20,000.
I'm sorry, how much?
I can't remember the exact number, it's like $9,760, 9,800, something like that.
Right, so we don't have that other math to do the precise
yeah.
math here, but it is accessible, right? We have availability of the numbers.
It's in the full budget, I just didn't bring my book.
Okay, Karen?
I personally feel if the board wants to move forward with the hockey team, and I feel bad, re-bringing this up when we already gave the go-ahead, so I'd hope it would pass. But I feel like the motion we had was invalid at that time, and that if we wanted to move forward with hockey, we should have the exact amount. But Lisa, you don't have the exact amount to subtract out of the 26?
I don't.
And we're talking about next year's hockey team, right? They're not playing this month.
And that was the other question. So can these funds be used for next year? Because
Talk about out of order.
So,
I wanted to
well,
make
so
sure.
I brought this up because of, in the interest of transparency, we just discussed how that RSA applies to one motion that came forward, and we didn't have that to consider when we took up the hockey motion in the past.
Right.
However, although, Lisa might be looking through her scribbles to find a to-the-penny number, we know that a to-the-penny number is available. If it's the will of the board, we can take up a fresh motion to the penny to support the hockey team,
Which we're going to do anyway.
which would be you require a 2/3 vote because it's not on the agenda. Okay, so I'm looking for the will of the board here. I don't mean it for us to be out of order. I'm trying to make sure I'm wrong.
You should
I
step
will just-
down and report it before you brought it up.
Well, I'll just say personally, I'm disappointed because I did ask for this to be on the agenda. So I'll just throw that out there. Sent an email asking for this to be on the agenda because I was concerned about this particular motion.
Okay, so Lisa, do you believe it's within our power to go somehow and get that number this evening?
We got a lot of
And
magic
We
tricks.
can try.
And then the second question I have is this a valid motion if it's for next year and not this year? And I hate to say that you know, again, I feel bad for hockey. And I'll be the first to say, I honestly voted no the first time around, but I would hate to have them feel like this. I would vote yes this time, because I'm not doing this to throw a monkey wrench into things. I just feel we should go about it the correct manner.
Okay, so so you're asking if it would be for next year. So the prior motion, in its, lack of wisdom, was to encumber funds in the next 11 days in order to pay for the 2018-19 hockey season.
It honestly doesn't say that either, so that's the other thing. It says move to fund the hockey team in the amount of up to $20,000 from any excess funds from the 2017-18 unallocated fund balance.
So at the moment, let's move on in the agenda, because that's where we're at.
Okay.
And I know you're flipping through the book there, Lisa, but we're then on to board chair report and then superintendent's report. So I have two small things to offer tonight. Well, three, actually. First, I'm not Lisa Stedman, so thank you for bearing with me. Lisa is away attending some family matters this week. Second, I'd like to welcome Karen as our new Swansea rep. So welcome. Thank you for being here. One more time for everybody. How do we pronounce your last name?
Buno.
Buno. Okay, I promise to forget.
And
But-
you swore in?
I did not. That's not my role.
Lillian.
Lillian did.
You got the clerk to do it?
And then my third item is there's been a fair bit of email back and forth just on getting organized and when we're having our committee meetings. And I think for the benefit of everyone here and for the public, we landed on a situation where who was participating in what committees just conflicted too many times on too many Tuesdays. So extracurricular and policy has moved to the first Wednesday of every month. Full school board is, of course, the first and third Tuesday of every month. Education and facilities is on the second Tuesday. CRC will be on the third Tuesday prior to school board meeting. And then finance, facilities, and budget committee will be on the fourth Tuesday. The exception to that is I think there's a few committees that are still wrapping up their previous schedule for June meetings. So on the 26th, I think, there's 4 committees meeting. So, Karen?
And not to throw an exception with the first time, but because of the meeting schedule for the school board July meeting, education and facilities have shifted their time a little bit because the school board, because of the holiday, meets on the opposite Tuesday they normally do. I forget exactly.
10th instead of the 3rd.
Right.
July 4th week, yeah.
So, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Okay, so we're posting all the meetings. Included in your packet was all of the public postings. So pay attention to those. Make sure you know who's meeting where and when and why, or at least where and when. So that's what I have.
Okay.
Lisa, superintendent's report?
So also in the packet that that I handed out, actually, before I do that, I'm going to ask Dave to come up so that I can send him on his way, maybe to go enjoy his new grandson.
Oh, congratulations.
He has an update on the well.
Evening, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about Fitzwilliam Well. I need to ask for some, hopefully bypass the procedures a little bit. Did not have any idea what a public well was going to take to do. It's nothing like your house. I have talked to a few people, Cushing and another person out of Dublin. That was back in probably January or February. I did the engineering myself and got it through the state, okay? I cannot write a scope of the work for this. I have no idea. I feel very comfortable with Cushing and Sons, who have done all of our work for the most part, and Bart helped me, and Bart being in the district. And with the 2 prices I did get in for 500 feet, basically the same thing, and he was less. I do not wish to discuss it at the moment because we haven't passed anything, okay? Knowing that he has done plenty of public water in state wells, or, not state wells, but public water has gone through the state, I feel very comfortable with him doing this job. I would also probably have Johnny Holman, who is a Fitzwilliam resident, do the job in Fitzwilliam, because if I'm going to put a shovel in the ground in Fitzwilliam, I'm going to have John Holman do it. It's a lot easier and simpler that way down there. You wouldn't be over $10,000, but I'd just like to let you know, I'm trying to run this myself. Testing afterward would be through EAI with us. I mean, we've chlorinated wells here, so I plan on trying to do that myself. I'm asking not to go through and spend the money on an engineer to write that scope of work and to consider Cushing & Sons, along with John Holman, to do that major part of the work.
So,
I just got back. It didn't go through facilities because I have just received the okay from the state on what I sent in. It was a process.
so Dave, are you asking us to,
Bypass the procedure of me going out to find 3 different, I'd have to write a scope of the works. And like I said, I feel very comfortable with the 2 people I am comfortable with to do this job.
okay,
Okay?
okay. Nick?
I guess my question would be, if we don't have a scope, how do we know what they're going to do and that they're going to do?
Well, I know I'm going to do so much slurry and have to wait a day to take that out of the ground. We have what you call like it's a dig hole or the slurry hole that will come off the pumps. That's written in there. Things. I mean, I have a scope of the work that I'm trying to read from some other job in New Hampshire. It's like, whoa. Okay, it's tells you what type of cement. I know we're using Portland type 2. How deep we're going to go. We've all agreed to 500 feet. It's going to cost us, and prices will change after that due to wire pump size and everything. So I'm hoping we hit water enough of it before 500 feet. Bart will follow all the state recommendations on what we need to do. Okay, and like I said, I know he knows. He got me through this, and without that, I'd had to, would have hired SVE or somebody like that to help me along with that, send it into the state and stuff. If you guys aren't comfortable with that, let me know. I will just go through it. Probably won't happen by the time everything gets done. We'll go to SVE, and I just don't feel as though we have
I would
to.
move to accept Dave's recommendation and go with the 2 vendors.
Second.
Okay, so we're in discussion. I'll go with Betty and then Karen.
What's John Holman's role in this?
Oh, he'll be digging a trench,
Oh,
the site pit and things like that, and getting us over to the building. We're further away than what I started with, thinking we'd be closer to the others. It's a better idea to get further away. We're on the other end of the building. We'll be digging a lot further and things like that. Hopefully, you can run into ledge. There's a lot of things we can run into on that site. It's a very bony site.
and knowing wells in New Hampshire, so you're right now planning on 500 feet. What if you get water before that?
We'll stop.
Good. And
No need to dig any further, Betty.
what if you have to go beyond 500?
That's a discussion I'll bring forward to you and see what we need to spend.
Okay.
Do we need to second Neil's motion?
I mean, I may need to talk to Lisa and not go through the board with this. You have to understand, I'm not going to keep a truck there waiting for us to, in 2 weeks, to continue drilling.
Yep. Karen?
I just wanted to say that Dave's been very open with the board and facilities on this project in general, and it's moving forward with the vendors and everything that he anticipated, so I fully support it.
Dave, does the scope of work have to be certified by anybody?
No?
Okay.
I had a similar question. This is one of those areas, like you said, you probably have something you're going off of that's 500 pages or something that's ridiculous that has, and it's just one of those things you don't know what you don't know. So that's the only.
I know a lot more than I did when I started.
I bet you do.
A lot more.
You and me both.
Not a building, so I'm a little out of my, but I'm getting there.
Okay.
And the guy at the state was very helpful. He was good, so it was a pretty good. It was a good experience.
Okay, so you are working with somebody from the state with this as well.
Oh, yeah.
to get that input.
Thomas Willis, I believe. Yep.
Okay.
He's the guy I need to contact. There's a lot of them, but he's my guy.
Betty?
Would a second to Neil's motion be
Yeah, I
appropriate?
did.
There already is one.
Oh,
Winston
okay,
second.
missed it.
Yeah, me too.
So the motion on the floor is to bypass our policy for seeking bids from 3 vendors at a certain price threshold, and to approve the vendors that Dave has recommended. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Oh, Nick?
The only other thing I'm going to put out there is that there's probably going to be somebody with hurt feelings somewhere, that we're not having this wasn't on the, was this on the agenda?
No, it was not.
That's a good point, so we need
It's,
two-thirds.
like I said, I just received this back from the state, so I'd like to get this going. It took a long time
Two-thirds,
to
we
get
need
it back from the
two-thirds.
state.
Yeah, so let's do a roll call because we need the two-thirds to quantify that. Everybody good? Jeremy?
Kristen,
Yes.
Wynn,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Neil,
Yep.
Nick,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Sherry,
Yes.
Betty.
Yes.
I'll do my best, Nick.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Dave, while you're still here, if folks don't mind me jumping around on the agenda, I just, Dave's here and he's the expert. Could you give us an update on the Troy School property evaluation and drilling?
Well, yeah, we haven't quite started that yet. The drilling will happen Thursday this week. I'll spend my day there for the most part, and then I believe next Thursday, I think it's next Thursday, that I'll be talking with the engineers. Along with that, I'll bring up Mount Caesar with them. As far as I'll change it, we'll go with, like we always have, hire the architects and engineers, and I'll start getting ready to do the Mount Caesar project next year. Okay?
Did anybody have any specific questions about the progress in Troy while Dave's here? No? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
Good night, Dave. Thank you. Congratulations, too.
Congratulations, yes.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
All right, Lisa, still with you?
Still me. So also in what I handed out to you was a summary of graduates for this year. The BOY on the DOE website indicates 117 students. I went through every single student ID number. That is not the same 117 that we started with. We had some ins and outs. So it ended up being the exact same. And that's actually not the same as the BOY number that we report. Because the state, I think I talked about this briefly in maybe a meeting earlier. When they issue their BOY number, there are certain students with certain codes that they take out of the count, and there are some that they may put back in. So I did the best that I could, but 117 is the number I worked off of. Like I said, we had a few in and a few out. 103 graduates for 2018. We have 10 additional kiddos with existing completion plans and 4 non-graduates this year. Okay. I also handed out tonight the audit report for 2016. You should have received 3 documents. 2 Dear School Board letters and packets, one with just a summary of findings, one with a more detailed findings on certain accounting corrections, and then the full financial statements and report for your light bedside reading pleasure. Janelle is on vacation, so she's not here tonight to field questions, so please don't fire them at me because I won't be able to answer them well, other than to say that there were no significant findings. And as you read through the 2, I think the shorter of the 2 letter packets gives you a sense of what those specific findings were. 2 more things.
Just make an observation on this. This is a much shorter list of observations than we had for the fiscal 15 audit, and we are now doing a district response, which I thought was really great.
Thank you. So 2 things? Yes, 2 more things. I will be away at the annual Superintendent's Conference for New Hampshire next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll be back Thursday and Friday, and then I will be away on vacation through 4th of July week. And we will have a need for non-public this evening, first under C and then under B. And I have the number for hockey if we'd like to circle back.
Come back to that in a little bit. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay. Are you good?
I am good, thank you.
Jeremy?
I just have a couple things. The first thing I'm handing out, this number, is I was asked last board meeting by Rob to provide the SAT scores from last year. So I'm not really going to talk on this tonight. It's just for your information, and it'll come up at a later time. So after we get the teachers and administration at the get it out to you.
Excuse me.
Thanks.
All right, so the spotlight tonight that I was asked to do was library services. So what I'm handing out is actually for the middle high school library. And I just want to basically talk about what library services are in our schools. The person who runs the library in the schools now is no longer called a librarian in that traditional sense. The title is Library Media Specialist. And we've been operating with one library media specialist for the whole district for the last 7 years today. And it's been Stephanie, it wasn't Stephanie Charlefort, but this year it was Stephanie Charlefort. And she worked at the middle high school and then was also supporting the elementary schools. In all of the elementary schools, we have paraprofessionals who work in the libraries. So the elementary school kids have 2 visits to the library each week, 2 scheduled visits to the library each week. They're specials. They have a library visit, which is learning library skills, research skills, enjoying literature, those kind of things, the traditional library. And then the second is the makerspace that I've spoken a lot about, the STEM connection to makerspace. And that's really been pushed into libraries. It's part of the library media specialist certification now.
Jeremy, can you turn your mic towards you?
Sorry.
Just to help with the feedback?
Yep. So we asked when we did budgeting if we could add a library media specialist for the elementary schools because one person for the whole district was running really, really thin. And we were working off of a curriculum that was designed by Charlotte Lesser, and she left in 2011. So it was time to rebuild that. Our library pairs that's not their responsibility to build curriculum or to design curriculum. They run the library. So the way that we were able to do that library media specialist, it was kind of a net zero thing. We had a reading specialist retiring, and we decided to take that position and make it a library media specialist. So we hired for that. You approved it last time. Her name is Lisa Wiley. She lives in Ringe. She's worked at Conant. And is coming over to us, and she is very excited. She will spend all of her time in the elementary school libraries. She will bounce from school to school. We're working on her schedule still, whether it be a set schedule. So every day 1 she's in Gilsum, day 2 she's at Cutler, day 3 she's at Mount Caesar. Or if there's a little bit more flexibility in it so that she can do longer term projects and do a couple days in a school and then go to another school. That's something that we're still ironing out to see what's going to work best. But her initial goal, her responsibility is to look at that library curriculum and figure out how can we teach these kids the 21st century skills through the library. Problem solving, collaborative work, sticking to the problem, and not giving up those skills. She and Stephanie will be working together this summer. We have some Title II money that allows teachers to work and collaborate together. So she and Stephanie will be working this summer to kind of get her up to speed. I'll take her to all the libraries so she can kind of check them out, see what the collection is, and really start thinking about how to move forward and how to push us forward with our library services.
Just a quick question. This document refers specifically to this
building.
library, right?
Yep.
Not the smaller libraries that we have at the...
Nope. Yeah, I thought this was a helpful document. Stephanie actually sent this to me. And it was like perfect timing. I was getting ready to talk to her about this report, and she sent this to me. It just basically shows you how busy she is in this building alone. And she was also trying to get out to all of the elementary libraries at least once a month to check in. She held meetings and professional development for our library aides throughout the district. So she's really gone over and above to support us, and I'm really happy that we can have another person to support her and work together with her collaboratively.
Questions for Jeremy? I'll ask one.
Yep.
Do you have any opinion yet on the quality status of our libraries? Is that something she's going to assess, something you've already assessed, where we're at with age of books, adding technology, those kinds of things?
Yeah, anecdotally I can, and she'll assess even deeper. She'll really dig into the collection. What I've been told and what I've observed going to all the libraries is that some of our libraries, the libraries have all been real school-based, so they have their budget, and each school spent that the way that they saw fit. So some of the libraries have much better collections than others. The way the library budget has been determined in the past is that it's by student, so many dollars per student. So a Cutler has more students. Their library has a much bigger budget line, so they can really keep upping that collection. Gilsum has 60 students. They have a much smaller budget line for the library. And what happens is there's certain books that all the libraries want, like certain collections, like the Great Stoneface books, which is a New Hampshire collection, or the I'm going to say it wrong, so I'm not even going to say it. But there's different, there's the Caldecotts or the Ladybug. Is it the Ladybug? Mm-hmm. Okay. The Ladybug books. And what happens is Gilsum has to spend all their money on that little collection, so they don't get to improve the rest of their collection. So that's something that is as a priority that we have to look at, and I've started talking about with the other administrators, that how do we even this out and make it a little bit more fair to purchase those books that everyone wants, like the Great Stoneface books, and then still allow the collections to grow in each school so that they're all rich.
Okay.
Technology-wise, we're in a really great place. We have carts in every school. So as you know, we're 1-to-1, 6 through 12, but we have so many carts now that we can be 1-to-1 K-5. Very easily. It's very rare that you're going to ask a K-5 teacher if they're not able to get to the carts, to the Chromebooks. So technology-wise, we're in a great place, honestly.
Pretty good. All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so other matters for discussion. We've introduced Karen already. That's our update on our Swansea board member. We've already heard from Dave on our Troy School property valuation. So the last item on here is the voter registration at the high school. And Neil, I know you brought this forward as an item for discussion, but was there actually any research or work done here
Yeah,
yet?
Neil and I are teaming up on this one, and we're making some good progress. So Neil, you want to start, and then I'll tell you what I'm doing on my end?
Yeah, I got a hold of our superintendent, they call her supervisor's checklist. Then the power went out, so we didn't talk a lot, but she was very enthusiastic. Her assistant was very enthusiastic. The problem I'm going to see, and Jeremy probably may have gone further, is that because this is so early in the senior year, we may not have many kids. That was what their problem was. They don't want to send a person if there's nobody here to do it. So Jeremy's going to check to find out how many 18-year-olds are. Turns out there's a primary in September, so that would mean we really should try to do it in September before the second week. So it's going to be a challenge, but we're moving forward.
Just to give a little background on it for people who don't have it, the idea came up, and Neil brought up the idea through, as you know, we're changing our social studies curriculum, and civics is moving to senior year rather than freshman year. And one of the conversations that Andy Harrison had with his group was how great would it be to do some registration for these kids as part of civics. And I brought that up at Ed Committee, and Neil jumped on that and said, what if we got it done at the schools instead of just walking the Swansea kids over? So I talked to Andy about it. He's very enthused and wants to support this in any way. And the idea is just to get them registered, not to get political with them, but to say you need to register, and you can register, and we'll make it easy for you. We'll bring the people to you. So that's the next steps, is reaching out to the other towns and asking their supervisors if they're willing to come. It can't be town clerk, correct, Neil? It has to be the supervisor of the
The
checklist.
supervisor
Yeah,
checklist.
supervisor
Yeah.
of the checklist. Wonderful.
But they can do it in Swansea as long as they're the ones that do it. And I got to
Gotta be
get a number of
advertised.
how many 18-year-olds we'll have. So
But they know all the rules, because they have to
Yeah.
come here for the other vote, so they know how to do it.
so it's moving forward. It's a really cool thing, I think.
Karen?
I was just wondering, you have to be 18, right, to register?
Voting day.
Yeah.
Not a day earlier. So
I've got some of the
to have it as
details, but I
close to
didn't
the
want to
primary.
bring them up until I'm sure I got them all. But yes, you have to be 18. They're looking for hopefully a driver's license,
Right.
some other stuff.
So you'd have to do it very close to.
Yeah. I mean, if possible, if we could get people.
But we could
in-
also do it at the end of the year next
exactly,
year.
and try to do it a couple times throughout the year.
I was
and
just
really-
trying to catch the vote in November. That's what
Yeah.
I was really looking at. I forgot about the primary.
I love this idea. I have to
I like
say
the
that publicly to Neil, that I think this is a great idea. I'll definitely call Leora when we do it and have her come up and check it out, because I think it's something that we should be proud of if we do.
I think like I said, I haven't really talked to her, it's been email exchanges. I think she's going to try to line up the other registrars,
Oh, nice.
or supervisors, rather. I keep changing the word, but it's supervisor.
Even better.
Nick?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to help boost civic involvement with our students, so.
Okay, great. So we're moving on to consent agenda, so we're going to start with...
Do you want CRC update?
Do you have a motion?
Tonight? No, I don't have a motion. Sometimes we report on committee meetings, so I have a report, but
Yeah, sure.
okay. So CRC met tonight. We set some goals for the upcoming year to include publicizing meetings and information, using social media for CRC meetings and board meetings to promote community participation in both CRC and board meetings through postings and social media, and to develop relationships with local select boards to improve communication by attending select board meetings 2 times annually in all towns. And so we have a plan for that. We'll be talking to some of you in other towns to tell you more about that. But we'll be actually making the plan for that at our next meeting on the 17th at the Wilcox building. And we'll be bringing your charter for reaffirmation, our charter back to you for reaffirmation at the meeting on the 10th.
Anybody else have anything for discussion for tonight? Karen?
Are we going to discuss the hockey?
Well, so I was looking back at the minutes from April 17th, and I realized I may have put us in a twist for no good reason tonight, because the original motion from that date, as I read it, is to fund the hockey team from the 18-19 budget and to make it work, not to encumber any funds. So I don't know that there's anything we have to take up tonight.
So I'm sorry,
So are you looking at?
April 17th? Yep, April 17th,
let me go.
page 4.
I apologize if I took it differently. I just want to make sure that we,
This is to fund the hockey team in the amount of up to $20,000 from any excess funds from the 2017,
It's at the bottom.
2018 unallocated fund balance.
that's what I read too.
Okay, so I'm missing the amendment, so you're right.
That's what I was saying earlier. It has a lot of amendments, so.
It
So the
doesn't
motion wasn't made correctly anyway.
It doesn't specify that it would be encumbered.
Yeah, the hockey team will be funded, but use the unallocated funds if available.
Unallocated fund balance is a catchphrase for encumbering funds, typically.
Yeah.
So I just don't know that that's, I'm just concerned it's not.
Unindicated fund balance is the surplus. Yeah.
Which is what we encumber from. So, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection is that it was 2 separate motions. One was here and one was either at Emerson or Troy. And the first motion at the first meeting was about funding, kind of paying back this year.
That was
if
Emerson.
we were able to. And then the other one was to create hockey, basically say hockey is going to be part of the regular athletic program. I remember it as 2 different votes at 2 different meetings. And I don't know if I'm right about that, but that's how I remember it.
I remember discussing it, Jeremy, but I don't remember we've made 2 motions.
Well, that was April 3rd in Emerson, I think. Take a peek.
Do we want to take like a 5-minute recess or something, or just while we pull up some of this information? It's up to you. I just have thought.
Is there a motion that we're talking to right now?
There's a question of whether or not we have to take a motion tonight.
Regarding hockey.
So the motion in Emerson, Neil moved to allow the hockey team to keep the gate receipts from their games and to form a procedure agreed upon by the business administrator. And that motion passed. And Eric asked to have the full, the funding of hockey at all to be on the April 17th agenda, which we did. And that motion, so there were 2 motions the night of the 17th as well, so there's 3 motions in total.
Right.
Gate receipts at Emerson on April 3rd. A motion on the 17th to fund hockey team at 100%, go forward, that's it. And then Eric also moved to fund the hockey team in the amount of up to $20,000 from any excess funds from the 17-18 unallocated fund balance. Now, my recollection of that, and I'm trying to skim the minutes, is the hockey team, the discussion, the hockey team will be funded, but use the unallocated funds if they are available
For this year or next year?
next year. Unallocated
that's-
funds from this year.
This year's
But
unallocated.
we found out that you can't do that.
Well, that's what I.
You can't if you have an exact number.
Which is
Yeah, we don't
why,
have.
which is why we're discussing it tonight, right? So we learn these things after the fact. So Karen, then Cheryl.
So my concern, and from my understanding, and I apologize if I wish, unfortunately, Janelle's not here tonight, but in finance, I took it as you have to have an exact amount, and when you encumber funds, it's for this past year. If we want to fund hockey, it needs to be in the budget, because when we encumber funds, it automatically adds it into the budget. So if we want to fund hockey, it shouldn't come from the unallocated funds, it should be budgeted in next year. That's what my understanding is.
So my question is, we knew that hockey was somewhat self-funded. I heard from Lisa, though now we have an exact amount, that there was some monies that were from the budget. I've heard in addition that we've allowed them to keep their gates receipts. So in reality, we don't know where they stand at this point in the year. We see what expenses they had. We don't know how much the gate receipts defrayed that.
And we don't know what their current account balance is from fundraising and
Correct.
such.
And so I have no problem with encumbering funds from this year to close that gap for them. And if we can entertain a motion that says something like, using money from the unallocated funds to close, to cover open expenses from the hockey team, up to $20,000, or do we even need to do that if that was the intent of the previous?
But I think we're hearing it has to be a specific amount of money. can't
It
be
has
up
to be a specific amount of money to encumber it. I think our vote could say to do so, and then they could figure out what that specific amount is and encumber it.
Are we talking about this year or next?
This year.
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
talking about unmet expenses for this
yeah.
year.
Because I think that's sort of the dichotomy that I'm hearing is
Yep.
talking about this year or next year.
We can't pay anything from this year to next year.
From my understanding, they had enough funds raised and that they wouldn't, they weren't going to deplete that balance this year, coming up with their portion of it. And we've added so much stuff onto this with these other, I mean, right now, we're all sitting here speaking when there's no motion. But there's a lot, so much of this was done hastily. I mean, we pushed this through without even verifying that funds were available to do this in the budget, but this seems like another action against, in a similar vein, where we're looking to push something through without knowing numbers and having the right information. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with doing this. We have no motion. So if somebody wants to make a motion, I think that's something that needs to be done.
I think the existing motions from the 17th, there's two of them. One of them is well within our right, but the second one goes against the grain of, you know, the advice of how funds can be encumbered. So again, the two motions, the first one was fund it, and the second one was, but use unencumbered funds if there are any available, so that we're not just purely putting it on the coming year's budget. So I'm talking about this coming season, not the season that has passed us. The motion at Emerson was about the prior season regarding gate receipts. Karen?
My suggestion would to put this on next meeting's agenda, and my belief is that it should be in the budget for next year, not necessarily encumbered. leave the motion as is, and we can check with our business administrator to see the validity of this particular motion.
Yeah, so I agree with taking it up at next meeting. I think the question is that second motion that Eric made, where, you know, we could identify a specific dollar amount, but it's from previous season. We don't have a specific dollar amount for next season. So is that motion that Eric made and we all agreed to, is it actually out of order?
Right.
In which case,
Point of order, I did not agree to it.
the board voted and agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the language from the DRA was, I have to look at it again, was that needed to be a contractual obligation, and I'm not sure that that exists. And I think that that's what Janelle was attempting to convey as well.
And I don't think it would until we actually incurred the ice time and things like that.
Or if we signed a contract for the ice time, which we don't. Not.
Karen?
I'm sorry, I'm just looking for a little clarification, only from, I'm looking at this dollar amount, and I was on the, for full disclosure, I was on the hockey board for 3 years, and I was a treasurer for 2 of them. So I'm still trying to figure out if Eric's motion was to pay for the season, and I'm sorry, I know you guys went back and forth, I'm still trying to figure it all out, the 2017-18 season, because looking at this dollar amount, that's pretty much what it's been since they've gone varsity. So are they looking, is Eric looking for any excess funds to offset this $26,000? And then from here on in, pay it in full?
So there were 3 motions. The first on April 3rd at Emerson was to pay back from gate receipts of the 17-18 season for the year that had just passed. And then April 17th, we took 2 motions. The first was to just begin funding hockey at 100%. And then Eric's, the third motion was induce for this first year, because we did not budget for it, and do so from unallocated funds of the prior year if there are any available. And that's the part we're learning tonight is not acceptable by, I'm not going to reference the agency properly. The
DRA.
DRA, thank you. Winston?
Yeah, could we include in a motion to fund it from unencumbered balances, the number, the amount to be determined prior to June 30th?
I don't know if that's, something we can accomplish in the summer.
But, and it's the idea that it's a contractual obligation is what the language that Jamie used. And I don't know that what's represented here is a contractual obligation. Awards aren't a contractual obligation.
Yeah, the stipend and the ice time are probably the only 2 contractual items on there. Maybe
And
the-
even,
Officials.
yep, uniforms wouldn't be, but again, stipends, we haven't hired those coaches yet.
Yeah. Could you figure that out in 11 days would be the thing that would,
I bet they'll get us a number.
Still can't pay it against the
But would we have contracts for all of these things? That would be the
Yeah.
trigger.
yeah. Karen?
I think the big problem is that this needs to, this motion needs to cover this past year's things, or something you're purchasing right now. And I feel like the intention of the motion was for moving forward with hockey for next year, like we're already past this season. So I don't see that we need to encumber the funds. I feel like it's more, should we be adding it to the budget for next year?
I agree.
I don't think it's a matter of encumbering anything, personally.
Yep, so the budget is set for next year, but at our next budgeting cycle, we would set it for the 19-20
Right.
school year. So this coming year, it's a bit of a pinch because we voted
Right.
to fund it.
Well, couldn't we do basically what we did this year, but at the end of the 2019, June 30th, 2019, then vote to encumber funds to pay for the past hockey season?
We could, but then we're in a vicious cycle of
Right.
of
But
relying
if-
on that every year.
But then the next, just for this upcoming season, and then put it into the budget for
Is that a motion?
next year. I suppose that's the motion. Well, or we could just wait to motion at that time unless we figure something else out.
It's a question of how we're doing with budget. So Lisa, then Karen.
Yeah, it would just be a point of order because that will be after the new board is seated.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Good point.
You can't bind a future board.
Right, that's what I was implying.
But I can also speak that we did this in the past as well, not fully funding hockey, but contributing more than what our normal contribution was. I believe we did it at the end of last year.
Or the year before.
Or the year before. Was it last year? Yeah. So it's not unprecedented that we've done that.
Doing this, I don't think you can go forward to the next year. I think that's pretty clear. Because otherwise, this board could say, well, we're going to lock in the ice time for the next 10 years. And that's putting, you're putting that on future boards. You can't do that. So, I mean, I don't agree with it going into the budget, but if it is going to go into the budget, I mean, for next year, I think that's a proper way of doing it. But doing it this year, I don't think is.
Could
it's
do it
kinda
on a transfer.
So,
Year starts.
so if everybody's agreeable, let's do this. We'll put this on the agenda for next time. Specifically, we're looking for a DRA opinion on the last of the hockey motions we made on April 17th.
Yep.
We won't take a motion tonight.
I agree.
And I know we're a little off book and, we don't have a motion on the floor, but we're having meaningful discussion and we're getting good work done, so I'm comfortable if you're comfortable. Are we good to move to the minutes? Okay. So you have a few different sets of minutes. We'll start with the public minutes from June 5th. Be looking for a motion.
So move.
Second.
Kristen?
I believe Eric Stanley was present at the meeting, and he's listed as absent.
Did he arrive late?
And I don't
Yeah, on
think
the
he even
7th, he was there.
arrived.
He arrived
He was
late.
right there.
He sat down here, but.
Yeah, I'd locked him up in a non-public.
And then on the last page, on number
Well, he
10,
was there.
it says our adjournment,
Please step
the
in the
final
middle.
adjournment was 9:35, and I believe that must have been 10:35, because the non-public session ended at 9:50, so. Or maybe it was, I don't know if it was 10 o'clock.
That's a good point. Yeah, yeah, I think that would be 10:35 because our last non-public started at 9:50.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Attention to detail.
Anybody else? Laura, are you good with both of those corrections?
If Eric was there, I honestly don't know that he was or not. I don't even have him written down.
He was listed as present in in all three of the non-public.
That's why I was wondering if he arrived late. I was just trying to
He may have.
skim it.
Winston said he may have arrived late, I think.
So sometimes it says not present, and then you go through the minutes and it says
He arrived.
he arrived.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Voila. It's Eric.
He made a comment under the policy committee, so he was there for the full meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, that was the 5th. Yeah, he was there.
All right, so let's list him as on the players list. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Oh, I'm sorry, abstention.
That's, Karen, were you also abstaining?
Yes,
Okay, so
sorry.
we have 3 abstentions?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on to the first of the non-publics, which start at 8:31 PM. You're looking for a motion?
Move them. For 9:30, for 8:31.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I had a,
No, well,
So that was a quick one.
you gotta get something you can throw at me.
sorry. This is not a big one. In issue number 3, the last the last sentence kind of area, it says, reset the contract to place Elwit on year 1 of the 5-year contract. I believe that should be a 3-year contract. Or is it?
I think it's 4.
4-year contract.
You know what, my 4 doesn't work on my.
I got that problem too.
No, you should see this.
I got one change too.
Okay. So that's a 4-year contract, Laura,
4-year.
and then Nick has something.
Yes,
All
under
right, no
discussion.
more fours.
Can we just write the word?
Nick is speaking.
You had to write 2 + 2.
No, it works.
Nick is speaking, please.
Under discussion, it says N. Mosier's in favor of the administration increases, but does not agree with giving some a bigger increase than the 2% or 2% across the board. What I said is I did not agree with 2% across the board. I'd like to see there be performance-based increases.
Laura, are you good with that, or do you want us to do some phrasing?
Got it.
Got it, okay. Everybody comfortable with those edits as suggested? Yeah? Okay, now we'll take the vote.
One other thing.
Yeah, you're-
The other thing was that, and I don't know if this is just a extraneous detail, but we had requested that Laura give us the last time that her compensation was updated. I think that would be an important thing to include in here so that we can look back and review upon that at a later point in time.
What would you like me to do?
You had talked about last time your compensation had been increased. Just include that
I think it was
in the
18
minutes.
years.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 7 or 8 years.
Well, Eric said that he was on the board. It must have been 8 or 9 years was
Right,
what we
because
had
were
decided.
Thinking of who
Yeah.
was still sitting on the
8
board
or
at
9
the
years
time.
ago was when
8 or
she
9
had
years.
last received it.
Right.
a raise.
Okay. Anybody else?
Now I remember Eric was there.
Going once? Going twice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Same abstentions.
Okay, we're on to non-public from 9:46.
Leave that to this one.
Leave that one alone.
Is there a motion?
Glad we have you.
So moved to our 9:46 meeting.
Who was that?
Second.
Okay. Kristen Karen.
Kristen, any changes?
None. No, I have no more.
I'll send you my minutes. Look them over before I.
You're suggesting that you take the minutes at some of these meetings we can't get Laura to. I mean, you're just
Said no to that.
you got the attention to detail, and I think, well qualified. Anybody else? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, last one, non-public from 9:50. Is there a motion?
No motion.
Second.
Second it.
Yeah, it's Kristen, and then the thumb wrestling match between Karen and Winston.
Winston, yeah.
I'm so gracious. Any corrections? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions.
Abstain.
Okay, do we have an
The
action on
three
the
of you over there
manifest?
on the same too.
Do we have a motion for the manifest?
I do. I'd like to move the manifest in the amount of $1,793,808.17.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Do we have the money?
Yes.
We missed you last week, Betty. We're like, oh no, what's the amount?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions. Okay, great. So setting next meeting's agenda. So far, I have hockey part 2,
CRC charter.
CRC charter. Hopefully, we will have policy JICI again. Anything else or anybody? Oh, Neil?
Yeah, Lisa said she was gonna put this in, and I haven't seen it yet. Spending money under 91A:3-2C. I don't think we should be doing that, and she said we discuss it, but this is the third meeting since then, and we haven't discussed it.
I'm not sure what we're,
We had a motion to spend money on when we were in C, in closed session. And I don't think you should have been doing that. You said you would discuss it, and then the other Lisa said, okay, we'll discuss it at the next meeting. That was 2 meetings ago.
Right,
Oh, we
there was
gotta-
information included in the last board packet relative to action in non-public session.
Remember, we had the handout.
And there was no discussion at the last meeting. It was in the packet, though.
Okay, Nick?
Unrelated to that, you said there's going to be more on JICI.
That's the one,
Didn't everybody vote for it?
oh, you know what?
Except for me.
You're right. So I have on the brain that we want to try to get the
It's the
employee
part-
version.
It's the partner one, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. My bad. You are very correct.
I voted no.
Oh, yes. Karen voted no as well.
Just saying.
Neil?
Yeah, I got, a constituent asked me if we could move the notices onto the school's website. Otherwise, you gotta go over to the town hall or to the SAU, and you could just go on the website and you'd see all that list, all that,
Meeting notice?
all
So,
that. I don't know if you want it for next meeting or whether we can just do it.
I think we could just take that up administratively.
So, the public notice, are we not putting those on the SAU website?
Oh, I don't see, she doesn't see this, nor this.
The agenda?
Yeah, the
Agenda's
agenda
on
and
there.
all the other.
They're there.
It's on, under school board.
It's one of those ones you got to drill down.
I look at it all the
We
time.
go to board, and then agenda, and then look through the list for the
Is that, I will tell her that she can find it, and if she can, I'll get back to you.
Okay.
And we'll have written instructions on how to do it.
Yep.
This has got to be one of the worst websites we own. Too deep.
Okay, anybody else? Shaping up to be a short meeting in July?
Well, if there's too many items, we can move stuff.
We should add some more to it since it's in Gilsum. It's always a short meeting when we're in
I don't know
Gilsum.
if I'm going to Gilson
It
anyway.
never
Yeah,
fails.
because we never, you know,
Our next
That's my
meeting,
about
birthday.
3 times we don't have power. And have to-
You'll need, I'll be requesting permission to hire between, after the July meeting to the start of school.
Okay.
I assume we'll get an update on all of our infrastructure stuff that we have going on, the well, the.
That's a good point. We'll probably keep that as a standing item, an update on the well, an update on Troy.
our next board
Updating
meeting
facilities
is
right along, so I could actually just put it in the report.
July
when-
10th.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that we have to ask Dave to come out if you have
I
all the
had it
information
from
handy.
Facilities and Education.
Yeah, and board, yeah.
Great. Anybody else?
Gilsum.
No? Good?
Gilson.
Okay, so we're going to take a recess. And we're going to go in under 91A3C. So we'll take 10 minutes.